and you go for an interview. Um, and that's what I did. I believe I was 22 years old. And so I had graduated from high school, but not in the traditional sense of how it was. I, in the 12th grade, I got pregnant with my first daughter. And so in those days, you didn't go to school pregnant. You had to leave school. And after you had the baby, you had to come back and either go to night school or a special school for pregnant girls. So I opted to go back to night school, and I graduated. I ended up graduating the same time as my fellow classmates did, but I could not participate in the graduation ceremony. And so um, I want to take a breath because it's all relevant about how I thought about myself in the world as a young woman. Um, I also have, and at that time had, an autoimmune disease that very few people, including doctors, knew anything about. The disease is myasthenia gravis. And so I really didn't think that I'd be alive long, and I didn't make plans, right? So I got the job with the police department, and I had my daughter, and was able to get a babysitter, and it was the beginning of me experiencing the world in a different way. And so I was not a police officer. It was a civilian job. And so I worked, my first job was actually working with, I believe it was called Aided in Accident. It was the department where if you were in a car accident and then you later needed your report, I was part of the team that helped do that. And so I continued to take exams in the police department. I found myself a couple of years later in the communication section, the section where we answered the 911 calls, we dispatched the radio police cars to emergencies, and I continued to take civil service exams, and got promoted. In order to get promoted, you had to take an exam. And it was also where I met people from all kinds of places, from different places. I met people different from me. I gained new friends, and the police department is where I met. Although I had been married twice before, I kind of skipped over that because I don't want to make this 10 minutes too long. Um, I met the love of my life at the police department. Her name was Regina Shavers, and she was just, you know, I don't even how do I describe her? She We used to tease her and said she thinks she knows everything. But the truth is, she didn't know everything, but she knew a lot. She knew a lot about everything. And so we became friends, and I learned new things. Um, it was from our friendship that I decided to go to college. And so um, I entered college, I was 35, and I went to the College of New Rochelle, the campus it was a union campus because the union provided that opportunity. And I started going to college there. And so I was taking classes, I had my daughter, and I was working. And the that was the first college that I went to. Before I got my degree, it was 17 years later. And so I didn't count them, but let me see. I actually attended Brooklyn College. I attended Empire State College. I attended how ugh, it escaped me. It'll come back. And oh, South Fong, I need your help. What's the college in Manhattan on like 60 something street?
Hunter.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Couldn't he love you? You had to-
I had to say Hunter because Hunter College is where I really met more women and got involved into women's clubs and women's activities. And so I became involved in the Returning Woman magazine, which was a magazine that we published for adults returning to school. I was in the Audre Lorde Club. I took poetry classes. It was like I was, in my late 30s, yet it seemed like my world, well, it didn't seem like it was true. My world began to open up. And I was still working at the police department. Um, so I need to take a breath. Am I making sense? Am I on track, Christy? Okay. Because I'll start talking and go way off into somewhere else. I just wanna. So around to the year, I forget, when my youngest daughter entered college. She went to Morgan State, and I was still, I'd go for a semester or two, and then I'd stop, and then I'd go back. And when she went, I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna graduate before her. that was that was what pushed me. That was what gave me my impetus to complete. And so I went to Queens College, City University of New York, an adult campus, and it was located at the Graduate Center in New York, and that's where I ended up. I got my degree, and so it was. That's where it is. I think I want to stop. Maybe you have a question to help guide me, or maybe fill in some of the blanks before I go on.
Hey, Christy. So yeah, does anybody have any questions? Christy, is there anything in the chat?
There's a lot of support in the chat, a lot of love for you. So we all love hearing your story.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So I actually have a question. So I'd like to know, a lot of us do not have reference as to your choice in life of becoming a reverend. What would you say about that? Like, how did you become a reverend, and how can we relate to you?
Okay. Okay. That is a great question, and it helps me fill in a lot of blanks. So I told you at my job, I met Regina Shavers, who's a woman, and I fell in love with her. We first became friends, and I fell in love with this woman, and it was totally unfamiliar to me. I mean, love is familiar. I knew what it felt like, but it was the first time that I had fallen in love with a woman. And so I started going. I always went to church on some level, not every Sunday, not all the time. But when I fell in love with her, I started going back to church. I started going every Sunday. I prayed more because the question that I had for God was, am I okay? Am I doing the wrong thing? Is this okay? Because those were the messages that I was getting from some family members and even from some of my friends that it was wrong. And so I started going back to my family church, the church that my mother attended at the time. And after a while, I realized, in what I heard, people talk about talking to God and hearing what I felt and what I knew was that I was not wrong and that I should live my life as fully as I could. And so I began to do that. That was the beginning. And then one year, Regina and I went to a leadership conference in Los Angeles, a Black leadership conference. We went to this conference. It was several days, and the last day, which was a Sunday, there was a church service, and so we were curious. Um, so mind you, Regina was she dressed in men's clothes. That's what she was comfortable in. And in those days, and you didn't wear pants, even regardless of whether they were men's or women's. You didn't wear pants to church. And she had was not going to church, even though she had grown up in church and she believed in God. She wasn't going. And so when we went to Los Angeles, we said, well, let's go look and see what it's all about. And we stood outside and watched the people go in, and there were people that looked like us. They were gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender people. And so we went into that service, and the preacher at the time, Bishop Carl Bean, um, his message was the message that I remember. I'm sure there were many more words, but the message that I remember is that God is love. Love is for everybody. God loves me for all of who I am. And just because I was in love with another woman did not remove me from God. It was an amazing service, and we both felt like it was home. So, but this was Los Angeles. We didn't have a church like that in New York. And the two of us, we had a conversation after, and we were like, how great it would be to have a church like that come to New York. And if one does, that we would spend our time doing whatever we could to support it and to help it to feed people, because we were not the only ones that were looking for a spiritual place, right? And lo and behold, 2 years later, they sent a reverend to start a church in New York. And that was 1992, I believe. And the services were held at the Gay and Lesbian Center on 13th Street. And so it required a setup and a takedown, and getting the pastor accustomed to New York. He was a Los Angeles guy, and we started going and working with him to build this church. And during this time, so I know what I needed, but what I found out was that there was oh my God, the the center, our service was upstairs. It was like the center was 3 floors, I believe. And before time started, the line would be from upstairs all the way down outside down the street to get in to the church service. So that says that people were looking for a place that they could worship and feel and know that God loves them. So I got involved, not as a clergy person, but as a layperson. I was on the board, I ran errands, I chucked stuff back and forth, whatever we could do to make it work. And the church eventually found another space in Brooklyn, and it moved to Brooklyn. And I stayed there as well, and I continued to work. I've, it's I say this and I still say it. I'm really an introvert. I'm a shy person. And so I like to do the work, but I'm usually doing the work behind the scenes. Um, and and that's what I did. I was, I did the work behind the scenes. And so I did that for a little while. I met some other people. I met another friend, Jacqueline Holland. She was the assistant at the church in Brooklyn. And as time went on, I don't remember exactly what happened, but life is real, even in church. We're all real and we're all human. I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and I left church. I said I can go to the beach on Sunday. I like going to the beach. And so I wasn't going as often, but Jacqueline, in the meantime, was called to start a church in Newark, New Jersey. And she asked me if I would help her get it started. You know, the skills that I had around the administrative stuff and the church boards and stuff. And so we were friends, and I agreed to help her, letting her know that I would not be going from Brooklyn to Newark, New Jersey every Sunday, but I would help her out. Those were my words at the time. And that's what I started doing. And then eventually I was there every Sunday, still working in the background, but slowly coming out and meeting people and talking to people. And there were a lot of young people, a lot of young, particularly in New York, this is the part that I missed. There were a lot of young men that were infected and affected by HIV and AIDS. And some of them had been thrown out of their home churches, had been thrown out of their homes, and they found a space in Unity Fellowship Church. Um, and when we went to Newark, it was the same thing. In addition to the young men, there were also young women, and it be, I wanted to do what I could do to support them having a place, right, making the place available. And so then I slowly came from behind the scenes, to being more involved with actual people. And I got to know them and work with them, and was involved in the various meetings. And um, Pastor Holland said to me one day, asked me if you know, she thought I was ready, that I should be a clergy person. I was like, I don't need to do that, you know. But we had some conversations, and so I agreed, um, thinking that that would be the extent of it. It was the first level. I did that, and then I began to work more and visit people in the hospitals, and really, you know, have those conversations with people about God and being gay. And I was once I fell in love, I was always out. So I felt like I was an example. I could be an example. I could be support when someone um, needed to go somewhere. And that's what church was and is to me. It's really about um, it's about God, but it's about how God moves in me in a way that is about love, you know, and how do we do that? And so it was really a natural fit. It wasn't so much the preaching part and the standing up front that was my strength, but it was working with the people. It was being, you know, going to City Hall and talking about needs and getting support. We eventually got a grant from the state of New Jersey to have a prevention program, you know, and that's what I could do, and that's what I wanted to do. And so that's how I became a reverend. My church, I'm still involved with it. It's about um, doing what it's a Christian church, so it's about doing what Jesus would do, and that is caring for the people. It's about loving your neighbor, and love is action. Does that respond to the Reverend part, Andrea?
Great. Yes, it does. Does anybody have any questions? Christy, do you see any hand raised?
So there is a hand raised, but before I get to that, there was a question in the chat a little bit earlier. You kind of touched on this already. So Brianna says, it's beautiful that you chose to live in your truth. And her question is, were you aware of your sexuality before you met your partner on the force?
I was not. I was not. Um, you know, people ask me that all the time, and I think about it, and I was not. I I um I hadn't, you know, I grew up like many of us do. We just do what we think we're supposed to do, right? We take the path that we think we're supposed to take. And so it never, I mean, I didn't even know any gay or lesbian people. I didn't until, as I got older, I became more aware of it. But no, no, I wasn't. And when I fell in love with her, I remember writing her a letter and saying, I don't know what's going on. If you were a man, I would say I was in love with you, but this is just not what I'm accustomed to.
Thank you so much. So Amber has her hand raised. Feel free to go ask your question.
Okay, so hopefully I don't cut out, but I kind of have like two questions, three questions. I don't know. I grew up in the church too, and I have a very conservative family. And my sister, she is gay, and she's actually married to a woman. I was her high school sweetheart, and my mom had ended up kicking her out and throwing her out when she was 17. And like me, I kind of don't have like a label to my sexuality. So it's kind of just like, how did you come like adjust to that with your family? That's like my first question. And then my second question, this is probably way too deep for this Zoom, but like I said before, I grew up in the church. Like I mean, I'm pretty rusty on my Bible, but you had made the comment like, hey, God's love, God, he loves you, he loves that. Like I kind of have trouble believing that because um there's just a lot of things in like the Bible, for example, and like that he would, like, for example, he this is like so random and like maybe too deep, but he was like, okay, like I'm gonna curse the Israelites with like roaches and cockroaches and something, like, because they didn't do what I said and how I wanted it to be. It's like, or now you're gonna have roaches and like roaches and mice and all that stuff. And I'm like a person of love would never do that when he's like, everyone's like, oh well, he's only love, he's purely love. Like he did things it's not like, I don't know how to explain. I feel like I'm like, I don't know. Does that make sense? And it's like he's like, when the world ends again, like it's gonna go in fire and everything. Like the Revelations then is in fire, and it's like, if you don't love me, like if you don't do exactly how I say and worship me the way I want it, then you're gonna burn forever. And I feel like that's not like,
That's not love. So,
love.
yeah, yeah. So I didn't grow up in the church in that way, but the people that when I speak about the young men and women, many of them did, and that was the pain that they brought with them to church. And so here's what well, let me answer the first part first about how I dealt with coming out in my own sexuality. First of all, I was 35. I had my own place. I was already a mother, so no one could kick me out. They could stop being friends with me. They could say bad things about me, which they did. Um, but I was an adult, so it is a little different. I have had conversations with young people who were thrown out, but that didn't happen to me, right? And how I reconcile it with God. Here's what I believe. The Bible is I don't take the Bible literally. I understand that the Bible was written at a certain time by certain people, men, for what was going on in the world at that time. And so there are a lot of things in the Bible that are counter to love and counter to, I mean, you question, there are things in the Bible like, do you really believe that? Did that really happen? By the same token, I also believe that there are lessons, there are things in the Bible that can help me think and question about how to be the best person that I am. And that's how I make it. I don't do it literally. And I don't, I don't see God as a man or a woman. I don't see God as a person. I still question sometimes, well, I know God is not a male, God is not a female. What is God? How do we, I still have those questions. But I have come to the conclusion, and we know that Jesus through history was a human being. And so I believe that his walk was about love and loving one another and taking care of myself and others. And so that's, I mean, that's it for me. I I I don't try to break the Bible down because you can never do that. I just understand it was written, it was written then, and that's what was going on in the world then. And some of the rules that come up, that was their societal rules and their religion. And so I'm not. There are all kinds of Christians, and I understand that, but that's the kind of Christian that I am.
So thank you so
Thank you
much
for
for your
answering that
response.
question.
Yeah.
So who's the next hand raised?
We have one more hand raised. Her name's Leticia. Uh, definitely mispronounced that.
No, you actually got it right. Hello, Reverend Jones. I'm just curious. I would imagine that a lot of people may have come to you in the past at their lowest or darkest time. So where do you get your source of inspiration or hope? Or how do you stay positive and
Yeah.
to be able to provide that support to people?
Um. Hmm. So I believe that it, it's God is mystical. Let's this is it's a mystery, and it's mystical, and it's an energy that feeds me, that has taken me through the world. I have been in some very dark places, and I have come out of it, and I remember those experiences. So I want to say I don't know. My desire to walk in love, my desire to be there for people that reach to me, um, my desire to be open, and to know that there are so many things that we can do, if we open ourselves up to it. And also, I realize that, bad things are going to happen. It will. I focus on how am I going to handle this situation today. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you.
Hmm. I wish I could see you guys. Oh, I'm trying not to say you guys. Things change. Things change often and fast, right?
That is okay. And
Hi there. Somebody put their camera on. Great. Hi.
So one question that I do have for you is how did you choose? How were you able to balance everything going on in your life? Right, there is this. Um, well, I don't know about for you, but for me, when I have to deal with I have like this emotional burden of not really aligning with what my beliefs have been taught to me, right? And as you grow up and as you've become so big in your activism, have you ever felt something like that? Has that something have how have you dealt with that? That makes sense?
That, tell me what the dad is again. I'm sorry, dad.
Like the emotional burden. I don't know if you experience something like that, but that's always something I've done.
Um, the burden of doing what I do.
Not what you're doing, but sometimes who you are as a person conflicts with what a lot of people say. People who are good in religion, like Reverend should be
Ah,
straight, should be this, priests are straight white men, things like that. And,
mhm,
obviously none of us here like that, you
mhm.
know?
Yeah. How do I deal with that? Um, First of all, it's funny you said that. When I got so big, I don't think of myself as big. So I read my bio and I was like, wow. So I don't. I take it day by day. right? I something will piss me off, and I will try to figure out, what can I do to support making it right? What can I do to bring justice? Um, in the beginning, when I got to the level of clergy where I was actually wearing the clergy shirt, right? It was it was not easy. It definitely was not easy. And it was I had to, where did I get that strength? I don't know. I had to, because what some folks tried to do was ignore the fact that I was a clergy person. Um, we'd have events that we'd attend, and I'm trying to think of something in specific. But just like, I don't know if many of you have experienced the disregarding because you're a woman. So I'm a woman, I'm clergy woman, I'm a lesbian, all of that on top of it. And most times I just got like, I don't want to curse. Although I am a cursing reverend. I don't know if that's going to throw y'all, but sometimes I get like, forget y'all. This is who I am. And I think I became very staunch in standing up. Like it's like a deep breath and a strength that you have to pull in before you step out the door, knowing what I'm going to face. And then when I get home, sometimes I cried. Sometimes I had to cry thinking about what happened. Like, did he actually skip over me? Did he actually not acknowledge that I was a reverend? And how in all of that, I still have to stand up, shoulders up, head up, be respectable. So it was, I guess I would say, Christy, day by day, and also community. Have I have friends, um, not family so much, unfortunately, um, but friends that I could really talk to about what I'm feeling and what I'm going through, and to get feedback and support from.
Thank you. Having like a support system. I'm trying to grow mine, so it's a
Yeah,
it's a battle. It's a
it is a
battle.
battle, and I found it in strange places, not strange, but unexpected places, right? So Xiaofang says I'm one of her fairy godmothers, but for me, it's like when I need some information, when I think of a smart woman with, around women issues and stuff, I know I can go to Xiaofang. And so we may not talk for months or a year or whatever, but we have that bond and that relationship where we support each other. And so I did learn that support doesn't have to look like your best friend,
I
because
like that.
yeah, it doesn't have to look like your best friend. It's somebody that um believes in you, somebody that will pull your coat, that's going to tell you like it is, you know, and somebody that will watch your back.
So again, just a reminder, if you don't want to ask your question out loud, if you feel a little nervous, type it in the chat. I'll ask it out for you. Or if you have any questions that you do want to speak out loud, please raise your hand. Another question that I do have is, what do you say to people who feel like they're too old to do anything, right? Because in media, it's like after I hit 25, suddenly I'm like this, decayed old woman and I can't do anything with my life anymore. But obviously that's not the case. So what do you say to people who are like, you have your whole life ahead of you?
Listen, oh, where do I begin? So so my bio, right? So when I worked for the police department, all the things that I did in terms of activism, I learned them. I didn't even know what I was doing. I called it fighting. I'm just fighting for what's right. Um, I was a shop steward at work, and I became a shop steward because I was tired of them trying to take advantage of us. And not everybody will speak up. So somebody has to speak up, right? So then speaking up, I was labeled. Oh, there she is. There she goes again. She's the one with the big mouth. So I accepted that. I was like, okay, that's who I am. I need a few people to come with me, but I understand not everybody will come, right? And I just began to fight for and for what I thought was right. Um, so this is an old people thing. I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, I got it. It's never too late to do anything, right? And so when I retired from the police department, I actually left early. There was a buyout in the city of New York, which meant I could I had the number of years, but I didn't have the age to retire in the normal way. And so there was a buyout, and because of the number of years, I could retire. But I was working in the church and I was working in the HIV prevention program. I was volunteering. I couldn't really, have the two jobs. Um, and that was all new to me. I didn't know anything about nonprofit. And so I learned it through my passion to provide HIV prevention information and condoms and make sure that people were getting tested. I learned how to manage a nonprofit and how to be in a nonprofit and how to I never became the grant writer, but I learned how to find grant writers, you know, um, and I learned what was needed in a grant to get the funding, and so I learned all of that just based on my desire to do it, and so it I mean, we say it and it's a cliche, and I guess people don't believe it, but my experience has taught me the older I get, the bolder I get. Because at some point, you know how at one point we like, we say we don't, but we really care about what people think about us. That goes away with time. So as time went on, I became less conscious or caring about what people thought. Um, and I wanted to learn something new and do something different. Because the truth of the matter is the police department, that job in the police department, and I will not put it down because I get a pension. It allows me to be who I am today. But that's all that job was. It didn't do anything for my soul. It didn't do anything for my heart. Except I shouldn't say anything because I was on the calls when people called for 9/11 and I was able to help. But that type of job is not what fed me. And so as I did that job to, feed myself and my kids and pay my rent, I was out in the world learning and doing different things and meeting other people. And so I it I was talking to a young woman the other day and she asked me what would I tell her. And the word came to me, explore. That's my word. That, like, explore any and everything. Be curious. The we've been, as women in particular, and it's still happening. We've been taught that there is a road for us and it goes this way. And I'm telling you that yes, that road is there and there's an avenue on the side and a lane over there, you know, and then the street. There's all kind of stuff that may take you up that road, but it may also take you somewhere else that that listening to your heart and your passion. And I know it's not easy. You know, in the old days, our parents would say, you know, you say you want to do something like dance, and they'd wonder, well, can you get a job and pay your rent dancing? And so that's the kind of thinking that we've had. But I think there's a way to do it all. You know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that until you can do more of what you really enjoy.
Great. I'm so glad to hear that, honestly. Um,
Yes, I
Andrea, any questions?
100%, I 100% agree with you, Reverend Jones, that the older you get, the bolder you get. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but actually, Reverend Jones has an Instagram account, and she actually does a lot of acrylic work. Can you please share a little bit about what made you start your acrylic work? How does it make you feel? Just and maybe even like share your Instagram so people can follow you.
I would love to. I would love to. So I've always loved the beach. The beach is my happy place. The water, I get by the water and my body automatically exhales. And so when I retired, I left New York and New Jersey and I moved to North Carolina near water. And the first year that I was here, I actually slept a lot. I didn't realize how tired I was. I had worked I had worked, and not put enough playtime in it that I was just tired. And when I woke up, my real self came back and I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now? I'm not just going to sit around the house. I mean, I was planting vegetables in the garden and, you know, decorating the new place. That wore off. And so then I started to look for places to volunteer. And since I'm a senior myself, and I went to the senior center to volunteer, and I started volunteering there. That that is just, it filled me. Number one, here I am, I was like 65, 66, and I'm volunteering in a place where people are like 80, 85, and they're walking around and they're doing crafts and being sassy. I don't know if you ever see an old sassy Black woman, it would just warm your heart, right? And so that filled me. That was exciting. So I just kept volunteering and volunteering, and they got funding to hire. I did the front desk, so I sat at the front desk and, you know, did the copying and the filing and the answering. I was in heaven because I was just doing what I knew I could do without, you know, hard work. What I And so I was doing that, and they also offered classes every now and then. And we got notice that someone was going to come in and teach paint pouring. I had never heard of it, and I don't know why, but I was really excited about that. I put the date, and I hardly ever go to any of the classes there anymore because I'm usually working during the time. And this particular class was during my time to work, and I asked my boss if I could go. And I went to the class, and we did you know, a thing, and I have my first painting there, and I was so excited. I don't know what, it just was like, it excited me. It touched a place that hadn't been touched. I don't even want to say in a while. I think ever. And so this was 2019, November 2019. And so I came home, um, told my wife about it, showed her my little painting, you know, and she liked it. And he had given us YouTube people to look at and handouts. And so I looked at YouTube's and I went to Michael's and I started doing a little painting. Then, so that was November. Then comes March is the shutdown, right? I'm home, can't go anywhere. And so I began to paint more and more and the different techniques and I thought it was good, and I put one on Facebook and it lit up and people were like, oh, that's so nice. Oh my God. I was like I was 10 again. I was a young person again. And and so I kept painting and painting and I took over. This is where I am now. It's a an extra room, like a guest room, but I've taken it over. I don't know if you can see all the stuff that's on the wall. It's now my studio, and I looked around and I had over 50 pieces that I had painted. And so now I'm like, well, what am I gonna do with all of this? I can't put it all on my walls. And so I start calling my friends and asked them what they thought, and they were like, "Girl, you should sell that stuff. It's good." And I listened to them. I believed them. I believed that my art was good. I believed it was exciting. I believed that someone would buy it. And I started putting it out there. And so then I got in Facebook. I did first because Facebook is for older people. We know how to do that. So I have a Facebook art page, Art by Janyce. And then so then I started listening to more YouTubes and listening to classes, and they were like, well, you need an Instagram page. I'm like, oh my God, Instagram. So I learned how to start an Instagram page. I did that. um this year recently I took a class and I built my own website. I learned how to that was, so I have a website. It's not, I'm still working on it, but it's there. Some of my work is there. And so I've decided through that experience, I've decided, well, shoot, what else? There's stuff that I haven't thought about that I could do. And I want to learn something new every day. That's my thing now. And it keeps me alive. I mean, you can tell by my life and my work that I'm not one to sit home. I got to be doing something, and that's what happened. So thank you for mentioning that. Mhm.
Thank you for talking about it. I love looking at your art, honestly. There is a question in the chat by Nicole. Do
Mhm.
you think, oh, also, we have a little bit, like 3 minutes until 1, so we'll ask this question and then try and wrap up. I want to respect everyone's time. So Nicole does ask, do you think there were benefits to doing some of your education and activism later in life rather than in your earlier days?
Benefits? Hmm. Well, the benefit for me was that I didn't have. I mean, my mother was still alive, but I made my own decisions and I made my own choices. That was the benefit. And I had already established a a career, if you will, that I could, begin to take care of myself. But I think I would. I mean, you can't go back. So that was the benefit. That was the benefit for me. But even I was always organizing something, even if it was as a young person. I also like to gamble, so I would organize bus trips. So getting to people together to do things is something that I've kind of always done.
Thank you so much. Andrea, did you have any other questions before it turned 1?
Well, I just want to just thank you for your time, and feel free to put your contact information so people can contact you if they have any questions or connect with you.
Yes. So how do I do that? Put it in the chat.
Yeah, maybe
chat
like
Yeah.
an email or something. Yeah.
Okay.
You
Well,
can put in the chat, and also you can actually contact me, and I can actually connect you with I have a hard time calling Janice a reverend because but she is a reverend, and but she's always my Janice, and so I will contact her with you. I'm so involved into the conversation. I didn't do the poll. I'm going to forget about the poll, and first of all, it's about 7 o'clock, and I really want to sort of like respect Janice's time, and if it's okay for you, Janice, I'm going to ask you to hang around for 5-10 minutes, and if people want to leave, they can leave. If they want to stay to check with you a little bit longer, would that be okay?
yeah, I can stay. I had given myself until 7:30, and I realize that sometimes I talk long, and there were probably spaces that folks' questions weren't answered. So I'm good. Um,
Okay, so but I will say first of all, I think that we need to. I'm going to ask everyone unmute yourself and really give a big hand, big claps to Reverend Jones, and I feel like a little. I mean, you talk about being 10 years old. I feel like I'm the little girl who sit there, listen to story, and I just feel like crying the whole section. And it's good emotions. So I think that I really do appreciate that. And um like I said to everyone, we all need community. And I am 57 years old. Every time I see Janice and other old friends, and I reminded I am love. I'm somebody. I'm not nobody. And those feelings is just so important. Doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're 10, 11, 12, or like me, a middle-aged woman, an old lady, and you still need those reminders. So if you don't have one, please find one and use the women's center, use the peer, use the squad as a way to establish those community. But I also want to give a big shout out to Christy and Andrea. I think we should give them a big hand. And and they are so brave, and I really cannot be more proud. So if you like the event, give a thumb up. If you don't like the event, you can give a thumb down, and so I can do a sort of glance. If you like it, put a thumb up, and if you don't like it, you can put a thumb down. Yes. Okay, good. Everyone. Great, perfect. And I don't think that we have any logistic. And before I go, Anafa, do you have any logistic that we need to let them know? Let me double check. Tomorrow, you guys have a section at what time?
10 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to
Oh,
practice Zooming with Ivy.
okay. So tomorrow at 10 o'clock, you're going to learn about how to run an awesome Zoom event. So make sure that you sign up for that, and then you also have your full call, our writers workshop. I got some feedback from people earlier. I really want to stress once again, the goal is not to train you to be a writer. The goal is to get you talk about your story. Everyone have a story. Today, Reverend Jones share hers, and I'm 100% sure you all have your own stories. So take the opportunity to do so. And I am going to open the Zoom room for another 10 minutes, and if folks want to go, feel free to go, and I will see you guys later. And if you guys whoever want to hang around and talk to Reverend Jones a little bit longer, feel free to do so. And I'll get her number, whatever it is. And
yeah.
thank you
So
so much, Janice. Go ahead.
you're gonna put my contact information up for them to get, or should I do that?
Yeah, I will put it on the Slack for you guys. We have a platform, and I will put it
Oh,
on the
okay.
Slack for them. Yeah, so much
Okay.
easier for them to access to it. And
Okay. Okay.
yes.
This was
Anyone have question?
was really
Go
good.
ahead.
There's I see one of my friends, I think that's her, on as well, and it reminded me of something else that I didn't talk about. But for those that are left, sometimes we go into places and spaces that we think is good for us, because of the name of them. So for example, when I moved down here, I looked for the LGBTQ community, and it didn't feed me the way I needed to be fed. And so I kept looking, and I found what's called Zami Nobla, which is for older Black lesbians. So hi there. So never stop. Never stop. Don't be afraid to go in and decide that that's not working for you and to leave somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is one of my first time hosting, so I'm glad everything went well. I loved hearing you talk about your story.
You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Anyone else that has question? And I think one of the issues that I always think that it is really important. It is really about how you embrace life at different stage, and it is really, you cannot anticipate what will happen in the next stage, but at the moment you just take the opportunity and do whatever you want to do, and that is really it is hard, but I really need that reminder too, and I really appreciate it, Janice. I cannot. Well, you guys will see me cry soon, but
I see that Marianne put a question in. How do I think the LGBT community can work on creating more spaces for queer elders? And I think just even thinking about it, our focus is often on taking care of the young people so they can grow and take over the world. And I think we should continue to do that. But we also need to remember that there are those of us that have been there, done that already, and need a place to continue to grow. And, like me, like at the senior center, that's where I learned to do the painting. And so provide more places and spaces for us to live and thrive, because we're not ready to just sit back and die.
And for some folks that who don't know, and Brooklyn actually has one of the first LGBT center for senior of color, and called Griot Circle, and they still providing a lot of different services, and so I will share some of this information with folks too, because it is actually one of the other things that people don't talk about, because people do a lot of hard work to make it happen, and it is, I think, it's still the only one besides Sage.
Yes.
Right? And so it's still the only.
It's the one that's specifically for people of color.
Yeah, and so there's other senior center, but either they're mixed sexual orientation, or they are mostly white folks, and so it is a very different kind of experience for people of color. So I think that really do. Yeah, I just cannot. But I will share with those with the students. So
Okay.
yeah. Do you guys have any other comment, feedback? And
feel free to you can email me, you can reach out to me on Instagram.
I post all those already. They have it.
Yeah, and I'll get back to you. If you want to have a one-on-one conversation, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, everyone.
I really do appreciate it. Janice, love you, and thank you so much. I hope that I make you proud. And,
of course, you did. I'm happy.
That's all I want to do, to make my elders proud. And I'll see you guys. See you later.
Okay, bye-bye.